Hello and welcome back to Woodruff Family Wisdom at ppptime.com. And it is a gorgeous day here again in Texas. We've been getting a lot of rain. However, today the sun is out and it allowed us to come out to the patio.
Yes.
So my name is Rose.
And I'm Daryl.
And we're so happy to be here again today doing another Money Monday.
Yes.
So today we are going to have some new information, but we'll kind of do a little short review. I'll kind of start where we left off, I think.
Yeah, we'll start where we left off. Today's subject is going to be on apples to apples. But we left off last week out of Zechariah dealing with Zerubbabel. But if you would allow us, we'll go to 1 Corinthians chapter 2, verses 6 through 10. And I want to read it in the Message Bible because when we talked about Zerubbabel, we were talking about laying a firm foundation for our monies, right?
Right.
So it reads, and this is just a statement from me on this: God ordained foundational wisdom before the world unto our glory. And it reads, we, of course, have plenty of wisdom to pass on to you once you get your feet on firm spiritual ground. But it's not popular wisdom, the fashionable wisdom of high-priced experts that will be out of date in a year or so. God's wisdom is something mysterious that goes deep into the interior of his purpose. You don't find it lying around on the surface. It's not the latest message, but more like the oldest. What God determined as the way to bring out his best in us long before we ever arrived on the scene. That's 1 Corinthians 2.
You know what? I want you to go back and read where it says, talk about God's wisdom not going out of date. Which verse was that?
Well, the Message Bible clings it all together.
Oh,
right?
yeah, so we can't really see the verse.
Right.
But it talks about how God's wisdom doesn't go out of date.
Yeah, it don't
like,
go out of date.
Like other wisdom.
Right. Other wisdom seem like every January, right? Somebody come out with a new diet.
Yeah.
It's always this new way of getting you out of debt.
But you know what the word is?
Yeah.
Revised.
Right. It's always just
It's
revised.
revised.
It's just revised. Right. Then going back over to Zechariah.
It's where we left off from last lesson.
From last lesson. Zechariah 4, 9, and 10. And it reads, the hands of Zerubbabel have laid the foundation of this house. We talked about laying the right foundation. The wisdom of God lays the right foundation in us. His hands shall also finish it, and thou shalt know that the Lord of hosts hath sent me unto you. For who have despised the day of small things? For they shall rejoice, and shall see the plummet in the hand of Zerubbabel with those seven. They are the eyes of the Lord, which run to and fro through the whole earth.
Awesome. And we kind of talked about last week that we were going to be counting up the cost.
Right.
Setting a firm foundation. Because, you know, when we started this lesson, when we were talking about the king who gave the servants the money, and we talked about the faithful servant, and we talked about the servant who was called unfaithful and lazy,
Right.
and unprofitable. And so that's not the servant we want to be, because we're looking for God to take us on to being the king instead of being the servant. But God is saying that before we can be the king, or before we can be the owner, we have to count up the cost and lay a firm foundation.
Yes.
But what's really great about laying that firm foundation, that once you get your foundation set,
Right.
when millions of dollars come into your hand, your foundation is set. You don't have to worry about being frivolous. You don't have to worry about losing it. You don't have to worry about spending too much over here, over there. But today we're going to attack this lesson, lifestyle. But we're going to attack this lesson on both fronts, on natural as well as your spiritual.
Right.
So today's lesson, Honey's going to start, and we're going to start in, is it Matthew?
Luke 16.
Luke 16, okay.
Actually, yes, Matthew 10, the scripture where, Matthew 10.
And we're going to start off talking the story about the bad manager.
Right. So Matthew 10:16 is a scripture of reference that we want to lay, that we'll start with. Then we'll go to Luke 16, 5 through 12.
Okay.
But here in Matthew 10, verse 16, it reads, like sheep among wolves, we must be wise as serpents and harmless as doves. When you think about this, that's the mentality you want to have as we shop for our best service providers, to decrease our outgoing, become good stewards with our monies.
Because today's lesson is apples to apples,
Mm-hmm.
and because we learn a firm foundation,
Mm-hmm.
we got to learn how to. You're gonna probably feel like you want to be a wolf when you go and look at some of these things apple to apples. When you start looking into it, because you're gonna find out you're probably getting ripped off and defrauded in so many areas.
Mm-hmm.
But we're gonna be harmless as doves.
We're
We're gonna keep our cool.
Right, we'll
Okay.
keep our cool, but we're going to be wise and we're going to understand apples
Right.
to apples. So now we want to reflect to the story in Luke 16
Mm-hmm.
and talk about the manager that the owner called into question.
Mm-hmm.
He wanted to audit him concerning everything that he was managing and bring into an audit everything he had his hands on, because he was being unfaithful.
Right. Because he had heard,
Yeah.
the rich man had heard that his manager was not being good steward over his money.
Right.
And I wonder if God is saying the same thing,
Right.
that we're not being a good manager over our monies.
Right. One of the things that we discuss is that just because you live by faith and that you're a Christian
Mm-hmm.
doesn't automatically make you a good steward over your money. So you have to go back to these foundational principles and learn to be faithful, because God declared that the faithful will be in little, will be faithful also in much.
Okay, you want to just go ahead and read that?
Yeah. Coming out of Luke 16, verse 1 through 12.
Mm-hmm.
And he said unto his disciples, there was a certain rich man which had a steward, and the same was accused unto him that he had wasted his goods. And he called him and said unto him, how is it that I hear this of thee? Give an account of thy stewardship, for thou mayest be no longer steward. Then the steward said within himself, what shall I do? For my Lord taketh away from me the stewardship. I cannot dig, to beg I am ashamed. I am resolved what to do, that when I am put out of the stewardship, they may receive me into their houses. So he called every one of his Lord's debtors unto him, and said unto the first, how much owest thou unto my Lord? And he said, 100 measures of oil. And he said unto him, take thy bill, and sit down quickly, and write 50. Then said he to another, how much owest thou? And he said, 100 measures of wheat. And he said unto him, take thy bill, and write 80. And the Lord commended the unjust steward, because he had done wisely. For the children of this world are in their generation wiser than the children of light. And I say unto you, make to yourself friends of the mammon of unrighteousness, that when ye fail, they may receive you into everlasting habitation. He that is faithful in that which is least is faithful also in much. And he that is unjust in the least is unjust also in much. If therefore ye have not been faithful in the unrighteous mammon, who will commit to your trust the true riches? And if ye have not been faithful in that which is another man's, who shall give you that which is your own?
Right. And for the sake, we're just going to focus in on
Right.
not only the manager, because in the TPT version calls the steward a manager.
Right.
And we're the managers when it comes to our home, right?
Right.
So we're going to focus in on the manager or the steward, and also the clients,
Right.
which in another form, we are the client.
Right.
Right. So what was really terrible, I felt like, about the manager number one, he didn't even know what the people owed.
He didn't know what the people owed. Right. And that's relevant to our own home, right? You got to know what you owe.
It's one thing, we can't be like that manager,
Mhm.
not knowing what we owe.
Right.
Right. And on the other flip side, if we're the client,
Mhm.
right, we're in debt.
Right.
So we got to get out of debt.
Right. And so one of the things that we looked at is that each client was able to maximize a discount
Mm-hmm.
from the manager, right? And so we talked about, as we go into apples to apples, it's having that transparency to know what is owed, know the benefit of what you owe, right?
Mm-hmm.
this one person had a measure of wheat, the other one had measures of oil. So what exactly are the benefits that you purchased with your money? Because sometimes when you're looking at apples to apple and trying to retain those same benefits, somebody might be offering you something at a discount, but it don't have those same benefits.
Don't have the same benefits. That's right.
So you got to have apples to apples, so,
Right.
to leverage those discounts.
And another thing is we're looking at this, like we said, we was going to look at it spiritually as well as in the natural. So even in the spiritual, he says, he talks about the children of light, right?
Right.
We're the children of light, but he said, who was more better?
The world is wiser than the children of
The
light.
world is wiser than the children of light.
So
So a lot of times we upset because we feel like the world is ahead of the Christians.
Right.
But a lot of times Christians hide behind, I'm walking by faith.
Right.
No, you're not walking by faith. You're walking in the blind.
You're walking in the blind and you're walking by ignorance.
Right, because there's no way. Faith doesn't mean slothful, and faith does not mean being frivolous, just doing. I can remember one time when they was talking about, I'm going to write a faith check, even in church, and just believe God that by the time the check get to the bank,
Right.
that they'll have the money to put in the bank. God don't like that.
Right.
And I can remember at one church, they was talking about all these bad checks that they had to deal with. You know, because people was giving all these faith checks.
Right.
That's just been a lie, and it's
Right.
fraudulent.
Right.
You know, you can still go to jail even if you wrote that check to the church, just like if you wrote it to anyone else.
Yeah. It's just being slothful, right? It's more thorns to choke the blessing of God out your life.
Right. So the children of the world should not be smarter or more diligent than the children of light. We should know what we owe, and we should know how much we owe.
Right.
And just like they had wheat, barley, whatever, they knew exactly what that was. But he said, if you don't be faithful with the little, who's going to trust you with much, right?
Right.
And you're not faithful with worldly riches, who's going to trust you with the true riches?
Exactly. So they knew that the benefit was. I got this measure of wheat. I got this measure of oil, and they knew exactly how much they owed. So we're gonna go down through some practical teaching on that about understanding where you are, what you owe, and this is a prerequisite before you really shop around. You know, if you're gonna shop around, you want to shop around and make sure you're getting apples to apples comparisons. When you go in, last week we talked about getting you 3 quotes, or if you're having something built or you're working on a project, get you 3 estimates.
Right.
So.
But let's get this out the way too, babe. Because, you know, when we started this series, we talked about God trying to, he gave us according to our several abilities, right? And so we were trying to talk about receiving promotions, receiving businesses until ourselves. God giving us our own. And so God kind of turned the series because he said we're not ready yet.
Right. You gotta get faithful.
You got to get faithful. You got to set a firm foundation. And what's really awesome about you setting that firm foundation, and we're going to get into the practical teaching of it because, you know, if you study, we're not a financial planner in any way. However, if you can't afford a financial planner, you need to learn how to manage your money and how to manage your house, right? Because there still is no excuse not knowing what you owe and how much you owe and not being faithful with your little so that you can come up. So in other words, if you really want to come up and you want to watch God give you a miracle in your finances, we got to set a firm foundation and we got to set our budgets and we need to know what we owe through our balance sheets so that God can prosper us.
And God is laying the firm foundation in you, right? Because your ways is the one that has to change, not the financial planner.
Right.
If he coming in doing the work for you, you still got the bad behaviors. You know what I mean? Your mind is the one that's not renewed. So as we get into the Word of God and understand that this is wisdom that God had laid out before the foundations of the world. He never intended for you to be a borrower. He always wanted you to be a lender. He never intended for you to be the tail. He always wanted you to be the head. He never intended for you to be beneath. He always wanted you to be above.
Right.
And so even in the Old Testament, we kind of talked about that, how every so many years they had to make the other parts of the family back whole again because they got off track through disobedience or whatever, and it affected their finances.
So as we go ahead and move forward in these lessons, God is trying to bless us with the true riches. But it's just like any parent. We don't want to give our children more and more just so they can be more and more frivolous.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? We want our children to be faithful with the little, because he really wants us to be self-sufficient, and that's the goal of every parent. They want their child to be self-sufficient, possessing enough to acquire no aid for every good work and charitable donation.
Right.
You know, just because mom and dad has it, that doesn't mean I want you to be frivolous with yours and have to always come back to me.
Right.
So at some point, we need to grow up in the spirit in our finances and be faithful with our finances.
Right. God is not going to give up the true riches. God got on hold the blessing of the Lord to make you rich.
Yes.
But it's to add no sorrow with
And
it.
what else is on hold?
Right.
The blessing of Abraham.
The blessing of Abraham.
Because he can't give you the true riches because you're not even faithful with this worldly mammon.
Right. So as we become faithful and we dig deep, we want you to hang with us because we're going into this thing apples to apples.
Right. And on that note, we're just going to share our weekend. We spent our whole day because we're revisiting every so many years. God always bring us back to this.
Right.
And if you watch our little video that we shared about just on our little nightly stroll, and we was talking about the difference between how we did things, you know, years ago. We were so excited when our last bird flew out the nest and we became empty nesters. We kind of woosawed and we was like, oh man, we don't have to be as strict on our budget. So we kind of became frivolous in some areas.
Right.
And so now God is telling us, okay, pull it back in, pull the reins back in so we can get on with these true riches.
God is not a God of waste.
Right.
Right. And he intends for us to be faithful so he can release the true riches. Right.
So we spent our Saturday.
We spent our Saturday dealing with, I was running at the budget and she was running at the balance sheet.
And I was running at well, we did the budget together actually. And then I did the balance sheet and you was running at the apples to apples.
Right.
And you was getting quotes.
Right.
So, yeah.
Well, in that process of getting those quotes, it's imperative that you understand what policies you have when it's coming to car insurance. I don't care if you're shopping around for life insurance, if you're shopping around for service providers for lights, or to understand the kilowatts per hour. Whatever it is you're shopping around for, understand so you can know that you're getting apples to apples. And a lot of times when you get into these things, they begin to reveal, the other providers reveal more because they're trying to let you know, wait a minute now, we're providing this, but did they tell you this? And so you're getting wiser and wiser as you talk to the three quotes. See, if you just took the first person and you didn't let them know that you're comparing them with other people and that you're going to get these other quotes, they're not as revealing as to what's really going on in these policies, contracts, and whatever, right? So when we was digging in deep,
Let's just talk about the one. I think that, because I think the number one thing, at least for Texas, that they're going to probably look into, because our lights is deregulated.
right?
So the one thing we definitely found out about the lights,
Now unless you're in a co-op,
unless you're in a co-op, when they quote you the kilowatt hour, be something you have to look out for.
right? There's a fee that sometimes is not included, which is called a TPDS. This is a charge that's given by Encore, which is our where actually represent the grid or the electricity grid that the power is coming from. So they charge everybody a fee, but sometimes people can quote you without that fee involved and make it sound like it's lower, and then somebody else can actually include that into the kilowatts per hour. So you have to decipher. This person might say, "Oh, we 6 cents a kilowatt hour," and this other person say they're 9-11 cents. But does the 6 cent per kilowatt hour represent the TPDS, or was that just removed? So when you look at that and you ask those questions, have them calculated based upon having it in and having it out. So you can compare apples to apples and know that you're getting. Now electricity, the product itself, don't change, right? What we're trying to do is get a discount or understand what's the least expensive way to go about having that electricity. So when we shop around.
So that's the one nugget there for, you know, if you're going to be shopping around for another electricity provider. But also, we want to encourage everyone, because we can't get to next week's lesson until you buckle down and do a budget.
Right.
And it's not. It would be nice if you did a balance sheet. That would be great. But if you do not, at least set the firm foundation with your budget.
The budget is so powerful because you actually account for every penny coming in the house, right? And when you put it all together and you know where it's going, now you got more power to redirect it.
Right.
And be faithful with it. So you have to do the budget.
Yes, because God wanted to see you be faithful with your little. Show God your faithfulness in your little, and you'll be surprised how money will be drawn to you like a magnet. And it's really funny, because as we were doing this yesterday,
right.
also, as we was doing this yesterday, we were looking for an account number that we were getting ready to put in our Excel sheets, and we couldn't find the account number. So I said, let me just go look through some of this old mail. I said, we just got a letter from them the other day.
Right.
So when I opened up a letter that I thought was the letter that I was reading, we found it was a $200 check in there.
Right.
So
And it was only good for 90 days.
no, 180.
180 days. It was
Yeah.
good for 180 days. So
And we got it way back in February.
right,
So-
right. So I was like, man, let's hurry up and go get that in.
Get that to the bank.
Get that to the bank.
But you know, it was just like God is just saying, and He always encouraged you that when you on the right track, He always give you a little nugget to let you know, look, you on the right track.
Right.
So that was just a little encouragement to let us know we're on the right track. So again, we want you to visit ppptime.com, because remember, every video has a written lesson.
Right.
So go to ppptime.com and read the lesson that's around the video. And remember to like and subscribe, not only to our YouTube channel, but also subscribe to our newsletter. We have a monthly newsletter that's coming out. And you don't want to miss Big D, because for Monday news, it's not a newsletter, but Monday's right up around this lesson, Apples to Apples, because he has some good information. And also you can get, if you don't have a budget sheet, you can get a budget sheet off of ppptime.com, as well as, you know, they have apps now that you can just keep on your phone
Exactly.
for a budget.
Yeah,
You
we
don't-
went into actually Excel. And Excel got a spreadsheet. If you look computer savvy,
Mhm.
they got an Excel spreadsheet where I was able to put all my accounts, everything in there. It just shows us everything. I can just tap on what you need to tap on, do everything you need to do. It's already done.
And also,
Too easy to be faithful today.
it sure is, isn't it?
Right.
And also, I will be dropping a link in this description, and you can go to this website, and it also share with you the percentages that they recommend today that you save.
Right.
And they say, you know, 50% for essentials, and they said 30% for discretionary. Then they
The 20%.
20% savings. However, that's up to you, but we save 10% and we give God 10%. They don't have God included in on those percentages. So you do want to remember the Lord, because He said, give and it shall be given unto you.
Right.
Good measure, pressed down and shaken together. He said, what I will cause men to give into your bosom. So He also said, if you give to the poor and you give to the gospel, He said you get 100-fold return. So you don't want to forget the kingdom promises for giving when you set up your budget.
All right.
So again, remember to set your budgets, and if you want to do a balance sheet, do that as well. But be faithful with the little, so God can trust us with the true riches. And next week is the lesson that's going to be even better. We're so excited. We almost wanted to share it today, but we know we cannot.
Remember to like and subscribe and hit that notification bell.
Right.
Find out all we got coming at you.
And go back and look at the other YouTubes, and especially the introduction to this series. And step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, then step 5, and then where God just said, look, I'm trying to get you to the true riches, so you must have to be, but you got to be built on a firm foundation for me to loose the true riches into your life.
And you're going to have to be diligent. You can't be slothful. We break that spirit of slothfulness out of you, because you're going to have to do this in order not to walk in those thorns.
And don't hide behind, I walk by faith. Because that's not an excuse not to be faithful, because Jesus watched the money. Jesus watched when they fed the multitude.
5,000 in the baskets.
Right, and He told them to go
Fragments.
back and get those fragments off the ground. And when He sent those disciples back to get those fragments off the ground, there was 12 baskets.
Right. I
So-
mean, the monies that we're finding in our budget as a result, cancel subscriptions, you'd be
Be
surprised,
surprised at what's already there, just comparing apples to apples.
that you can use to get that ratio right. You might
Get
say,
your
oh,
debt
here's
to
some more
income.
money, right? I wasn't able to save, but now I put this over here and save, and now I'm able to do that because we talked about having those savings, so you can change from walking in debt in the first place.
Right,
Then you might find enough money to start accelerating some debt,
right.
you know, and all that. But God even has more for you as you begin to be faithful, but it's not coming till you get faithful.
You get faithful with the little. You get much.
That's what we remember.
So remember that you are
Happy, healthy, wealthy, fit, and forgiving.